gospel comes to us this Sunday from John, the 13th chapter. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I have said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." This is the word of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. I'd like to invite the children forward. Come on forward. Okay. Ooh, boy. Sliding into first there, bud. All right. So, I want to hear what your summer plans are real quick. We're going to Germany, that's right. Oh, here comes Jonah. What are you guys up to? Oh, nice, Niagara Falls. That's fun. That'll be a fun trip. Have you been before? It's big. It's a big water. It's loud. It's like... Cancun? You did Cancun? That's fun. Okay, awesome. So we got Niagara Falls, we got Germany, so a lot of international travel. That sounds fun. So I think that is great, and I hope that you have a lot of fun with that. I am going to say to you today, and we're going to take a little, since you guys are taking trips, we're going to do a little minor trip around our sanctuary real quick. My goal is for you to tell me through your nose which flowers that are on the sanctuary are real and fake. That's the goal, okay? On this little summertime trip, okay? Everyone stand up. Find the first real flowers with your nose. I have to keep your eyes open for this. What's the assessment, Jenna? Fake? Okay. Nothing? So what are you establishing? Fake or real?
Fake.
Okay. Fake? That one's also nothing? That one smells? Nice thing. Okay. There's still a few more flowers. I want to make sure you guys get the assessments. Okay. I want to tell you guys there are some real flowers here, and I think you're about 50-50 on them. That smells real, but you think it's fake? Smells real, feels fake. Okay, that's using even more sentences. Why don't you guys come have a seat? So I want to tell you that some of those flowers were in fact real. And we used to do real flowers every week. That got a little expensive. But they're real because we had a funeral this week for a woman named June Kassler. And those were the flowers that we had that her family provided. And she lived to be how old? Any guesses? 104. She lived to be 104, and we gathered here to celebrate her life. There was a bug. Okay, so what I wanted to tell you guys about those real flowers that came with her is that those came to symbolize the flourishing and the beautiful life that she had. She had 104 summers. Think about that. Some of you only had 7 summers, 4 summers. Can you imagine having 104 glorious summers? You had 11 summers. Yeah, that's right. The same thing with 8 summers in your life. That's an incredible way, I think, of counting how much you get out of life. But the most incredible thing at all about June Kassler isn't that she had 104 summers, 104 blooming flowers. Only had 5. The incredible thing about June Kassler is that she's going to have an infinite number of glorious days ahead of her because of the resurrection of Jesus. So when you see those flowers, I want you to think about the endless summer, the forever joy that we get to have in Christ, that she now experiences after having a really good life here on earth too. That's what we get by being children of God. You guys ready? If anybody asks you who I am, Would you join me in prayer? O Lord, may the meditations of my heart and the words of my mouth be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. All right, folks, I don't think we're getting anywhere today without talking about what glory is. It was just like right there, smack dab in the middle of our gospel. And if you were to back up a little bit in the Gospel of John, you would see that glory in this chapter, glory in John, it's all over the place. If we don't know what glory is, we're not going to understand this passage at all. So the immediately preceding verses and chapter also talk a lot about glory, and really specifically there's one passage before where it says, there were those who sought after the glory of humans and not the glory of God. Clearly, when we're talking about God's glory, we will be speaking about something unique from what the world offers in the way of glory. So maybe we needed to offer up what that is first and foremost. I think that glory could be understood by its cousin, honor. So honor is what you accrue to a person when they are worthy, when they either do things that accrue honor or are in positions of honor or are considered honorable by any sort of social calculation. However, glory is communal. Glory is at the scale of an us as opposed to just a me. Nations can accrue glory. Peoples can accrue glory. A church could be glorious. And the kingdom of heaven is a glorious thing. We sing in our hymn of praise, glory be to God. Glory be to what God has done here. So this communal glory still, I think, deserves to have a little bit more parsing out, and we have to figure out what that means before we can figure out what's special, what's unique about God's glory. I'm going to say one of the challenges in this time and age and place in talking about any sort of socially calculated thing is that the prevailing, probably the last 40 years or so of things has been suspicious about many, many different words and many different concepts. We've been in a stage of deconstruction, I would say. I don't know if you remember, it's been a few years back. The culture war is moving fast, and I can't keep up with it anymore. Remember when critical race theory was a big thing, and we were all really worried about, or at least some commentators were really worried about CRT? I feel like critical race theory was not presented correctly by anyone. I think that on the right it was a big boogeyman, and it was a way to foist a lot of culture war fears. But on the left, the way it was explained to folks was this is simply a legal theory that exists for lawyers. And that wasn't exactly correct either. So critical theory in general is a field of study that involves, you could do critical race theory. You could also do critical gender theory. You could do critical theory of many, many different things. The basic essence of it was, because it was a political, social study, the basic essence of it was to say these things are socially constructed. When we talk about race, we are talking about something that does not have an inherency. We're talking about something that people have put a lot of meaning into and a lot of markers into, but it is not necessarily a true thing. Same thing goes with gender, for instance. And I think I can play this one out with gender. I'll do this myself. This is Pastor Jim, I am a male. And in fact, I'm not just a male, I'm a dude. Like, if you get to know me, you're gonna he's not just being a guy, he's super into dude stuff. And the other day I was having a conversation with somebody, actually was at our burrito bar that we'll have downstairs today, but at the CYF thing that we've got with our youth group. And they were all talking about guns. And they were talking about how it was really scary because this one person wanted them to shoot guns. I love shooting guns. Shooting guns is so much fun. Shooting guns, when you hit a clay pigeon with a shotgun and it explodes into dust, there's a deep part of me that just rejoices. So that's the part of what it means to be a guy. For me, I can see that is something that brings me great joy. We just went to Ellie's dance recital, right? At Ellie's dance recital, there were 150 girls, less than 10 guys, right? So there's something going on here with gender construction, and we know that the way that we socially construct these things changes over time, right? So those dozen guys there in 19th century France, if you're a gentleman, you have to know how to dance. When did it become that being a guy means you don't know how to dance? I could tell you from growing up in the middle of this country, I learned a lot about what it meant to be a guy in terms of the things that you don't do, right? You do not dance. You do not learn how to sing. Can you imagine growing up, Mike Wade, for instance, in an English football match and you don't know the words to your chant? You're not a dude anymore if you're in England and you don't know how to sing, right? These things are socially constructed over time. I remember growing up and being like, if you know how to dress yourself, you're not a guy. Like, that's lame. That's a lame construct. These things can also be constructed well, I think, or poorly. So all this is to say that having an eye towards knowing that we are constructing our words, we are constructing our notions is useful. However, if we just leave people with a sense of, therefore they don't have any meaning, therefore they're not true, therefore they're inherent, that is highly problematic. Both are problematic. Again, let's go back just a little bit, and then I promise I'll move on from this point. But if we go back just a little bit and talk about the way that you were a man in, again, the 19th century, one of those key ways was, did you go to war? Did you march with your country? These are the intersections, right, between things like patriotism and manhood. So the question is, well, what if there isn't a war? What if there's not a war going on right now? How do I become a man in a time of peace? Oh, good news. Your country will create the war for you, right? They will, by adventurism, invent a conflict somewhere else in the world, which you can go and find yourself a man by going and fighting and killing and dying, perhaps. Whether or not it needed to be done, whether or not it was right, whether or not it was just. It is good for us to have moved on from this construction of what it means to be a man. However, have you seen the movie Glory? We're talking about Glory, right? Have you guys seen the movie Glory? About the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Regiment, African-American soldiers from here. The conceit of the movie Glory is essentially we're following back up on the actor Matthew Broderick, who we last saw as a spunky child, and we're asking, will he be overshadowed by the entire generational talent of African-American actors? Denzel Washington, you got him. We got Morgan Freeman in there. Andre Braugher is in the movie, the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So it's like all the world's best African-American actors and Matthew Broderick, and he does pretty well. And anyway, the film is about this group of men who do find in their hearts the need to march off to war, even after being told in the movie that any uniformed black Union soldier captured will be killed. They will not be afforded prisoner of war status in the Confederacy. Nevertheless, these men bravely find in their hearts the courage to go be a man, to go be a patriot, and to go to war, to risk their lives. The problem with when we deconstruct these words like glory, and say, well, glory is socially constructed, it must mean nothing, is there is a necessity for men to march at times like this. There is a necessity for us to fight and to be willing to risk our lives for something. Glory has to mean something because we need it to. In order for our nation to function, we need the glory to mean something. And so it goes also with our faith. It was necessary that Christ died the death that he died in order for God to be glorified. The word wouldn't mean what it meant if not for the first definition of what I'm gonna rehabilitate glory here into meaning something again, is glory are the things that you'll die for. All of us have a death to die. The death of Christ meant quite a lot in the way that he died. Therefore, I would say that glory in the Gospel of John, glory in our things, is defined by death. However, let's keep moving from death, because sometimes I'm afraid Christians get a little stuck on death, especially Christ's death, and we become kind of a death cult. We just keep on talking about death, death, death. Christ lived, too. He lived a life, and I think that we can talk about glory also in the terms of a life lived. And what do we live for? What did we do with our lives? What mattered in the lives that we lived? Well, for Christ, in addition to his teachings, which were paradoxical, teachings that turned the glory of the world on its head, and also his companions and the people who he was with, that turned the world's glory on its head too. They weren't particularly honorable or glorious people or groups, and yet who Jesus spent time with tells us a lot about what gets glorified and what glory means, what the kingdom of heaven's glory is. And finally and lastly, there is a third way that I think we can define glory. For both of those things are found in the world, right? How we live our lives and how we die our deaths. Those are things that can glorify any nation. They can glorify any group. That is indeed true. But there is one thing that exists only in God that does not exist in the world, by which God is glorified. And that is the resurrection to new life. That is the fact that God's abundant powers of creation are unconstrainable. So there is a third glorifying effect here, and this is the resurrection that is possible in God, the new life that we can always have in him. This is where things get mystical, because I can talk to you about what it means to glorify God and what it means to have a glorious death like the members of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment who put their lives on the line, who proved the currency of their glory by its worthiness, because we have but one life, and how that life is lived and died proves a signal of worth. But in God's everlasting abundance, there is no calculation. I can't find the number to talk about God's glory. God's glory is endless because God's power is endless. And here's where we arrive at our conclusion. The very next thing that God says to do in light of the glory of God is to love. To love one another. Love in the way that we were first loved by God. This is the way that we will show the glory of God. This last mystical way that I can't even conceptualize because it's beyond me, it's beyond my conceptions of glory here on planet Earth. That is the way in which we can show everyone else how glorious the kingdom of heaven, which is unfolding all around us, is, if we love one another with the love that we've been given. Ultimately, this is the conclusion of any of our lives and witnesses too, that we would show the world in whatever ways we can. I hope that you have a way of showing that love to family by being there for them, by listening to them. I hope you have a way of showing it to strangers, to people who God showed up for it, by the unlikely person. Make sure that your love is as broad as God's love was too, as shown in his life. And when it is time for us to come to die, I want you to know and to always feel that God's love is surrounding you and is so abundant that it will never leave you. It will follow you until you, too, passing through what Christ did in his crucifixion, came into the resurrection of new life. To that love, we give you thanks. Amen.